The heavy weight of the blanket settles over you, sealing you away from the noise of the day. It feels safe here, quiet. But do not let the silence fool you. Inside the fragile vessel of your body, 1,000,000,000,000 microscopic machines are humming. They are fighting wars you will never see and repairing damage you never felt. We often think of medicine as clean, precise, and sterile. But the truth is much messier. The cures that keep us alive were born from rotting hay, forgotten mold, and deadly poisons. Tonight, as the sleepless scientist guides you through the strange history of healing, you can close your eyes. The hard work has already been done, so you do not have to. Let us begin by acknowledging the vessel you are currently inhabiting. You are lying horizontal. Your heart rate is slowing down to a rhythmic thump, a drum beat that has been playing since before you were born. It is easy to feel permanent. It is easy to feel like the master of your domain. But biologically speaking, you are a softly glowing ember in a very dark, very cold room. For 99% of human history, the state of being alive was a temporary and terrifying condition. If you scratched your leg on a thorn, you died. If you drank water from the wrong stream, you died. If you breathed the air near someone who was coughing, you died. The human body is a miracle of engineering, but it is also laughably fragile. We have no hard shell like a crab. We have no fur to keep out the frost. We are soft, wet bags of protein, walking around in a universe that is aggressively trying to dismantle us. Think about the immune system for a moment. Right now, as you drift towards sleep, your white blood cells are patrolling the highways of your veins like bored security guards. Most of the time, it is quiet, but occasionally, a bacteria breaches the wall. It enters the warm, nutrient-rich paradise of your bloodstream. To a bacteria, you are not a person. You are an endless buffet. You are warm. You are full of sugar and oxygen, and you are unprotected. In the past, this invasion would have been the end of the story. The bacteria would multiply, doubling every 20 minutes. 1 becomes 2, 2 become 4, 4 become 8. By the time the sun rose, millions of invaders would be consuming your resources, turning your own body against you. Your temperature would rise as your body tried to cook them out. You would shiver under animal skins, praying to gods who could not see microscopic organisms, hoping your own defenses were strong enough to hold the line. Usually, they were not. But you lucky, spoiled modern human, you do not have to worry about this. You have a shield. You have a weapon. When the invasion happens, you swallow a small, white pill. And within hours, the invaders are dead. The war is over. You survive to complain about the traffic or the weather. We call this weapon antibiotics. And like most things that save our lives, we discovered it entirely by mistake because someone was too lazy to clean up their room. Let us travel back in time, not to a gleaming, futuristic laboratory, but to a cluttered, dusty room in London. The year is 1928. The month is September. The air outside is thick with the coal smoke of the city, but inside the laboratory at St. Mary's Hospital, the air smells of agar and stale coffee. This is the workspace of a man named Alexander Fleming. History remembers him as a genius, a hero, a titan of science. But if you were to walk into his lab on that morning in September, you would not see a titan. You would see a man who was very bad at washing the dishes. Fleming was a bacteriologist. His job was to study Staphylococcus, a nasty little bacteria that causes boils, sore throats, and fatal infections. To study them, he had to grow them. Imagine small, round glass plates, like coasters. Inside each plate is a layer of nutrient jelly, agar. It is the perfect food for bacteria. Fleming would smear the bacteria onto the jelly, stack the plates in the corner, and let them grow. A meticulous scientist would cover the plates perfectly. A meticulous scientist would scrub the bench down with bleach every night. Fleming was not meticulous. He was, to put it politely, a bit chaotic. He decided to go on a holiday, a vacation. For 2 weeks, the lab sat empty. The lights were off. The equipment was silent. But Fleming had made a mistake. He had left a window open, just a crack. But a crack is all the universe needs. Outside that window, the world was teeming with life. Dust motes floated on the breeze. Pollen drifted from the trees. And riding on one of those invisible currents of air was a microscopic spore. It was a spore of penicillium mold, bread mold, the same fuzzy blue-green stuff that grows on an orange when you leave it in the fruit bowl for too long. The spore drifted through the London air, avoiding the rain, avoiding the soot, and floated through the open window of the laboratory. It drifted down, dancing on a draft, and landed on one of Fleming's glass plates, specifically a plate teeming with the deadly Staphylococcus bacteria. Now, imagine this from the perspective of the mold. It has landed in a hostile territory. It is surrounded by millions of hungry bacteria. The bacteria are aggressive. They are fast. They want to consume the jelly, and they will happily consume the mold to get to it. The mold is outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1, but the mold has a secret weapon. It is not strong, but it is chemically brilliant. As it begins to grow, sending out its tiny, thread-like roots into the jelly, it realizes it is under attack. So, it begins to sweat. It excretes a chemical juice, a poison. This chemical is not designed to kill a human. It is designed to blow up the cell walls of bacteria. It is a siege weapon. As the mold releases this juice, the chemical spreads through the jelly. When Fleming returned from his holiday, he walked into the silent lab. He began sorting through the stacks of glass plates. Most of them were covered in the cloudy yellow slime of bacteria colonies. He sighed, tossing them into a tray to be cleaned. But then he picked up one plate. He stopped. He squinted. "That's funny," he muttered. On this one plate, there was a blob of blue-green mold. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the ring of death around it. Everywhere else on the plate, the bacteria grew thick and yellow. But around the mold, there was a clear, perfect circle, a halo of emptiness. The bacteria couldn't get close. Any bacteria that tried to cross that invisible line simply dissolved. They popped like water balloons. Fleming didn't scream, "Eureka!" He didn't run into the street. He just looked at the dirty dish and realized that the mold was fighting a war, and it was winning. He called the juice mold juice at first because he wasn't very poetic. Later, he named it penicillin. Think about the absurdity of this. For thousands of years, humans had tried everything to cure infection. We put leeches on our skin to suck out the bad blood. We poured boiling oil into wounds. We chanted spells. We drank mercury. We tortured ourselves, hoping to drive out the demons of sickness. And the answer was floating in the wind the whole time. The answer was a defensive weapon used by a fungus to protect its lunch. The drug that saved your life, the drug that allowed humanity to double its population, is literally just a chemical weapon used in a microscopic turf war between a fungus and a germ. We are just the bystanders who figured out how to bottle the ammunition. It feels strange, doesn't it, to realize that your safety depends on such small, mindless things. But that is the nature of biology. It is not elegant. It is effective. Fleming couldn't isolate the chemical properly. He was a messy gardener, not a chemist. It would take another decade and a world war for other scientists to figure out how to mass produce the mold juice. They had to grow it in bathtubs, in milk churns, on bedpans. They eventually found that the best mold for making the medicine didn't come from a lab at all. It came from a moldy cantaloupe found in a market in Peoria, Illinois. So, the next time you feel safe, remember the moldy cantaloupe. Remember the open window. Remember that chaos is sometimes your friend. Let the image of the mold fade now. Let the dusty lab in London dissolve into the gray fog. We are going to move further back in time, before microscopes, before glass, before we even knew what a bacteria was. You are walking through a damp forest. The ground is soft with mud. The air smells of wet earth and river water. It is cold here. A sharp, biting wind cuts through your clothes. You are an ancient human, and you are in pain. Perhaps you have a toothache, a throbbing, rhythmic pulse of agony in your jaw, or perhaps your joints are swollen from the damp cold. Pain is a constant companion in the ancient world. It is the alarm bell that never stops ringing. You stop by the edge of a river. Leaning over the water is a tree. It has long, slender branches that droop down like swaying curtains. The leaves are thin and silver green. It is a white willow tree. You do not know chemistry. You do not know biology. But you know tradition. You know that the elders say this tree has a spirit that soothes pain. You take a stone knife and scrape a strip of bark from the tree. It is rough, gray. You put the strip of bark into your mouth and chew. The taste is immediate, and it is awful. It is intensely bitter, a sharp, astringent taste that makes your mouth pucker. It tastes like poison, and in a way, it is. Plants cannot run away. If a deer wants to eat a tree, the tree cannot sprint to safety. If an insect wants to burrow into the bark, the tree cannot swat it away. So, plants fight with chemistry. They fill their leaves and bark with nasty compounds to make themselves taste terrible, or to make the predator sick. The white willow tree produces a chemical called salicylic acid. It is a chemical weapon designed to stop bugs from eating it. But when you, the ancient human, chew on that bitter bark, something strange happens. The chemical enters your bloodstream. It blocks the production of prostaglandins, the little messengers in your body that tell your brain, hey, we are in pain. Slowly, the throbbing in your jaw fades. The ache in your joints dulls. The alarm bell quiets down. For thousands of years, this was the only way. The Sumerians wrote about it on clay tablets 4,000 years ago. The Egyptians wrote about it on papyrus. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, told women to chew on willow leaves to ease the pain of childbirth. Imagine the scene, a world of stone and bronze, a world of constant physical struggle, and the only relief comes from chewing on the bitter skin of a tree that grows in the mud. But there was a problem, a big problem. Salicylic acid is an acid. It is caustic. It burns. If you chewed enough willow bark to cure your headache, you would burn a hole in your stomach. It was a cruel trade-off. You could trade the pain in your head for a pain in your gut. You could cure your fever, but you might vomit blood. For centuries, this was the choice: pain or different pain. Flash forward to the year 1897. We are in Germany now, in a brick factory building owned by a dye company called Bayer. A young chemist named Felix Hoffmann is working late. He is worried about his father. His father has crippling arthritis. Every step is agony. He needs the salicylic acid to move, to walk, to live. But the acid is destroying his stomach. He cannot take it anymore. He is caught in the trap. Hoffmann is looking for a way to modify the chemical. He wants to keep the pain-killing part, but remove the stomach-burning part. He wants to put a safety cap on the molecule. He decides to perform a simple chemical reaction. He takes the salicylic acid from the willow tree and he mixes it with something you have in your kitchen right now: vinegar, or, chemically speaking, acetic acid. He performs a process called acetylation. Essentially, he is gluing a little group of atoms onto the side of the willow molecule. He is masking the sharp edge of the acid. The result is a white powder, acetyl salicylic acid. He tests it. It works. It kills the pain just as well as the raw bark, but it doesn't burn the throat. It is gentle on the stomach. It is a miracle. The company Bayer needs a name for this new powder. They take the A from acetyl and spear from spirea, another plant that contains the chemical. They call it aspirin. It becomes the first true blockbuster drug in history. It is the first time we took a natural defense mechanism, a chemical weapon from a tree, and tamed it. Think about that the next time you have a headache. You go to the cabinet, you open a plastic bottle, you take 2 small round white tablets. You swallow them with water. You don't taste the bitterness. You don't have to chew on bark. You don't have to sit by a muddy river in the rain. But the chemistry is the same. You are consuming the distilled essence of a willow tree's desire not to be eaten. You are borrowing the tree's armor to protect yourself from your own nervous system. The tree fights the insect. You fight the headache. The chemical bridge connects you both across millions of years of evolution. The blanket feels heavier now, doesn't it? The thought of these ancient connections is soothing. It reminds us that we are part of a system. We are not separate from the trees or the mold. We are just borrowing their tricks. Let us leave the riverbank now. Let the taste of the bitter bark fade from your memory. We are moving to the American Midwest. The landscape is flat and wide. Endless fields of grass and grain stretching out to the horizon. The sky is a pale, washed-out blue. The year is 1920. The winter has been wet, terribly wet. Farmers in Wisconsin and Alberta are noticing something disturbing. Their cattle are dying, but they aren't getting sick in the normal way. They aren't coughing. They don't have fevers. A farmer walks out to his barn in the morning light. The air smells of damp straw and manure. He finds his prize bull lying on the ground. The bull is weak, breathing shallowly. The farmer notices a small scratch on the bull's leg, maybe from a barbed wire fence, maybe from a thorny bush, a scratch that should have healed in a day. But it isn't healing, it is bleeding, and it won't stop. The blood is thin, watery. It seeps out of the animal relentlessly. The bull bleeds to death from a scratch that wouldn't hurt a child. It is happening everywhere. Cows are undergoing routine procedures like dehorning or castration, and they simply bleed until they die. It is a massacre. The farmers are panicked. They call it sweet clover disease. They notice that it only happens when the cattle eat hay made from sweet clover, a plant with yellow flowers that was brought over from Europe. But the cows had eaten sweet clover for years with no problems. Why now? The answer lay in the weather. It was the dampness. The wet summer had caused the hay to rot. Mold had grown on the clover. Here is the twist. Sweet clover contains a harmless chemical called coumarin. It smells nice. It's actually what gives fresh-cut grass that lovely sweet scent. It is used in perfumes. It is totally safe. But when the mold attacked the clover, it performed a chemical reaction. It ate the coumarin and twisted it. It changed the molecular structure into something new, something toxic. The mold turned the sweet smell of grass into a potent weapon that destroys vitamin K. Vitamin K is the instruction manual your body uses to clot blood. Without it, your blood forgets how to become solid. You become a leaky vessel. The farmers were feeding their cattle poison. Not on purpose, but because the hay was a little bit spoiled. For years, this substance was identified and extracted. It was named warfarin, and it was sold as the world's most effective rat poison. It was perfect. The rats would eat it, feel fine, go back to their nests, and days later, they would simply go to sleep and never wake up. It was clean. It was efficient. It was death in a powder. But biology is a game of balance. One man's poison is another man's cure. In 1951, an army recruit tried to commit suicide. He wanted to end it all. He found a box of warfarin rat poison and swallowed the whole thing, a massive dose. He was rushed to the hospital. The doctors prepared for the worst. They expected him to die, but they gave him vitamin K. They gave him blood transfusions, and to everyone's shock, he survived. He recovered completely. This failed suicide attempt changed everything. doctors realized that if a human could survive a massive dose of rat poison, maybe, just maybe, a tiny dose could be useful. Think about the number one killer of humans in the modern world: heart attacks, strokes, blood clots. A clot is just blood that has become solid when it shouldn't. It blocks a vein or an artery. It stops the flow of oxygen. It stops the machine. Doctors realized that if they gave a patient a tiny, microscopic amount of the rat poison, it would thin their blood just enough. It would prevent the clots from forming. It would keep the river flowing. They rebranded it. They called it Coumadin, but it is the same molecule. Today, millions of people take this blood thinner every day. Perhaps your grandmother takes it. Perhaps you take it. It is one of the most common medicines in the world. But trace the line back. It started as a mysterious plague killing cows in a Wisconsin winter. It became a way to kill rats in the sewers of New York. And now, it sits in a plastic pill organizer next to the bed, keeping hearts beating by making sure the blood doesn't get too thick. It is a delicate dance on the edge of a knife. Too much, and you bleed like the cattle. Too little, and you clot. Medicine is not about finding safe things. It is about finding dangerous things and using them with extreme precision. It is strange to think that we are kept alive by small doses of death, but that is the way of the universe. The difference between a medicine and a poison is often just the dose. We are walking a tightrope, suspended over the void, balanced by the chemical ghosts of moldy clover. But blood is just one fluid. Consciousness is another. There is perhaps nothing more terrifying than the idea of surgery before the mid-19th century. Close your eyes and picture a hospital in the year 1840. It does not smell like antiseptic. It smells of sweat, sawdust, and fear. There are no beeping machines. There are no sterile drapes. The operating table is made of wood. It has leather straps, heavy ones. If you needed a leg amputated or a tumor removed, you were awake, fully awake. Surgeons were not judged by their delicacy. They were judged by their speed. The best surgeon was the fastest surgeon. A good surgeon could remove a leg in under 30 seconds. It was not medicine. It was butchery performed at a sprint. They would give you whiskey, or perhaps a stick to bite on, hence the phrase, bite the bullet. But alcohol barely takes the edge off when a knife cuts through muscle. Patients would scream. They would struggle. 4 strong men were often employed just to hold the patient down. The psychological trauma was so bad that many people chose to die of their illness rather than face the knife. The concept of anesthesia, the artificial sleep, seemed like magic. To turn off the brain, to disconnect the mind from the body's pain, it was considered impossible. But the discovery of the void, the beautiful black void of anesthesia, did not come from a serious medical study. It came from parties in the early 1800s. Young people in America and Britain were bored. There was no television, no internet. So they went to ether frolics. Ether is a chemical liquid that turns into a gas very easily. It smells sweet, sickly sweet, and chemical, like a marker pen mixed with sugar. At these parties, People would soak a handkerchief in ether and inhale the fumes. It made them feel light, drunk, dizzy. They would laugh uncontrollably. They would fall over. They would run into walls. It was hilarious. It was a parlor trick. One night, at one of these parties, a young dentist named Horace Wells was watching the festivities. He watched a man inhale a huge lungful of ether. The man began to dance around, stumbling and laughing. In his drunken stupor, the man smashed his leg hard against a wooden bench. It was a brutal hit, the kind of hit that should have caused him to howl in agony. But the man didn't even flinch. He kept laughing. He kept dancing. He didn't feel a thing. Wells watched this. The gears in his mind began to turn. He wasn't looking at a party trick. He was looking at the end of pain. The next day, Wells decided to test it on himself. He had a colleague extract one of his own wisdom teeth while he was high on laughing gas. He woke up a few minutes later. He looked at the bloody tooth in the tray. He looked at his colleague. "I didn't feel it," he whispered. It was as the prick of a pin. The era of agony was over, but it wasn't a smooth transition. People were terrified of this artificial sleep. The church argued that pain was God's will. They argued that women should suffer during childbirth because it was written in the Bible. It took a queen to change the world. Queen Victoria, the ruler of the British Empire, was pregnant with her 8th child. She was tired of the pain. She was the most powerful woman on earth, and she decided she did not want to suffer anymore. She asked for chloroform, a newer, sweet-smelling gas similar to ether. Her doctors were hesitant. The priests were scandalized. But you do not say no to Queen Victoria. She inhaled the gas from a handkerchief. The room spun. The voices faded. The pain dissolved into a gray mist. She delivered Prince Leopold while floating in a cloud of disconnected bliss. When she woke up, she called it that blessed chloroform. Suddenly, because the Queen did it, it was fashionable. It became the standard. The scream was replaced by the silence. Today, when you go into surgery, an anesthesiologist injects a cocktail of white milk-like fluid into your IV. They ask you to count backward from 10. 10. You feel cold. 9. The lights look fuzzy. 8. Your limbs feel heavy, like lead. 7. And then nothing. You skip time. You time travel. 1 second it is morning. The next second you are waking up in a recovery room, thirsty and groggy, with the surgery already done. It is the closest we ever come to death without dying. We chemically disconnect the soul from the machine. We turn off the lights in the house so the workmen can fix the pipes. And it all started because bored teenagers wanted to get high at parties and fall down without hurting themselves. The blanket around you is warm. You are not in a cold operating theater. You are not chewing bark by a river. You are safe. But let us drift from the operating room to the barnyard. We need to talk about cows again. Cows seem to be a recurring theme in human survival. First, they gave us the blood thinner. Now, they give us the shield against the plague. Smallpox. The word itself sounds small, but the reality, was a monster. Smallpox was the greatest killer in human history. It killed hundreds of millions of people. Kings, queens, peasants. It did not care. If you caught it, your body would be covered in painful, fluid-filled blisters. If you survived, you were often left blind or horribly scarred. It was the Red Death, the terror of the world. But in the English countryside, there was a rumor, a whisper among the milkmaids. Milkmaids were young women who spent their days milking cows. They had smooth skin. They were famous for their beauty. Why? Because they never got smallpox. They would get something else. Cows get a disease called cowpox. It causes blisters on the cow's udders. The milkmaids, touching the udders every day, would catch it. They would get a few blisters on their hands. They would feel a little sick for a few days. And then they would recover. But after that, they were invincible. Smallpox could sweep through the village, killing everyone in its path, but the milkmaid would walk through the house of the dead and never catch a fever. A country doctor named Edward Jenner heard these whispers. He looked at the hands of the milkmaids. He looked at the blisters. He had a theory, a dangerous, radical theory. He believed that the mild disease from the cow was teaching the human body how to fight the deadly disease. In 1796, Jenner decided to test this. Now, in modern science, we have ethics committees. We have safety protocols. We have volunteers. Jenner had a gardener, and the gardener had an 8-year-old son named James Phipps. Jenner took some pus. Yes, fluid from a blister, from the hand of a milkmaid named Sarah Nelmes. She had caught cowpox from a cow named Blossom. Jenner took a sharp knife. He made a small cut on the arm of the 8-year-old boy. He rubbed the cow pus into the cut. The boy got a little sick. He had a fever for a few days. Then he got better. Then came the terrifying part, the part that would put Jenner in prison today. 6 weeks later, Jenner took pus from a smallpox victim, the deadly virus, the killer of millions, and he injected it into the boy. He waited. The parents waited. Nothing happened. The boy did not get sick. Not even a single blister. The mild ghost of the cow disease had whispered the secret password to the boy's immune system. His white blood cells knew the enemy. They were ready. Jenner called his invention vaccination. It comes from the Latin word vacca, which means cow. Every time you get a vaccine, you are paying tribute to a cow named Blossom. You are using a trick learned in a barn to teach your body to fight monsters. It is a strange thought. We are apex predators. We build skyscrapers. We fly to the moon. Yet our survival depends on the biology of our livestock. We are chemically tethered to the animals we domesticated. The immune system is a library. A vaccine is just a book we add to the shelf so the body can read it before the test. And the first book was written in the fluid of a blister on a milkmaid's hand. Take a slow breath. Feel the air filling your lungs. That air is full of history, full of invisible things. But your body knows what to do. The library is full. From the barnyard let us walk into the garden. A beautiful English cottage garden. It is summer. The bees are humming. The flowers are in bloom. Tall purple spikes of flowers rise up from the green leaves. They look like little bells, or perhaps little fingers of gloves. They are foxgloves, Digitalis purpurea. They are stunningly beautiful, and they are incredibly deadly. If you eat the leaves of the foxglove, your heart will go chaotic. It will beat irregularly. You will vomit. You hallucinate, and then your heart will stop. It is a witch's flower, a plant of folklore and poison. But in the 18th century, a man named William Withering heard a story. He was a doctor, a man of science, but he was stuck. He had a patient with dropsy. Dropsy is an old word for heart failure. The heart becomes too weak to pump blood. Fluid builds up in the legs, the lungs. The patient slowly drowns in their own fluids. It is a slow, miserable way to die. Withering could do nothing, but the locals told him to go see the wise woman of Shropshire, an herbalist, a witch, some might say. She had a secret recipe, a tea that could cure the dropsy. It was a mixture of 20 different herbs. Withering was desperate. He bought the recipe. He took it back to his lab and analyzed it. He threw out the herbs one by one, testing them. Most of them were useless. Mint, strawberries, just flavor. But one herb was the key, the foxglove. He realized that the witch wasn't using magic. She was using a precise dose of poison. The chemical in foxglove, digitalis, does something contradictory. It slows the heart rate down, but it makes each beat squeeze harder. Imagine a tired horse trying to pull a heavy cart uphill. If you whip it to run faster, it will collapse. But if you slow it down and make it take deep, powerful steps, it can make it to the top. Digitalis forces the heart to take powerful steps. It clears the fluid, it saves the life, but the line is razor thin. 1 cup of tea saves you. 2 cups kill you. Withering spent 10 years studying the flower. He learned to look for the signs of toxicity, a yellow halo in the vision, nausea. He turned a folk remedy into a science. Today, millions of people with heart failure take digoxin. It is a pill. It is white. It looks boring, but it is not boring. It is the crushed essence of a beautiful purple flower that grows in the shade of the English woods. It is a poison that we have tamed just enough to keep the rhythm of the heart steady. The garden is full of secrets. Every petal hides a chemical factory. And sometimes the cure does not come from a flower or a mold. Sometimes it comes from a monster. Let us travel to the desert, the Sonoran Desert in the American Southwest. It is hot, dry. The sun beats down on the red rocks. Crawling slowly across the sand is a lizard. It is heavy, lumpy. Its skin is a pattern of black and pink beads. It looks like it is made of rocks. This is the Gila monster. It is one of the only venomous lizards in the world. It doesn't have fangs like a snake. It has grooves in its teeth. When it bites you, It chews. It grinds the venom into the wound. The bite is excruciating. It feels like your blood is on fire. But the Gila monster has a superpower. It only eats 3 or 4 times a year. It eats a nest of bird eggs, and then it goes to sleep for months. How does it survive the spikes in blood sugar? How does it handle the starvation? Its saliva contains a hormone, a chemical that regulates sugar with incredible efficiency. Scientists looked at this venom. They saw how it controlled the lizard's metabolism, and they thought of diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is a disease of sugar regulation. The body loses control. By studying the spit of this desert monster, scientists created a synthetic version of the hormone, exenatide. It helps people control their insulin. It helps them lose weight. The latest generation of weight loss drugs, the ones you hear about in the news, trace their lineage back to the venom of a sluggish lizard in the Arizona desert. We look for salvation in the strangest places. In the rot, in the poison, in the jaws of monsters. And speaking of poison, let us talk about the deadliest substance known to man. If you were to take a single gram of this substance, the weight of a paperclip, and disperse it evenly, it could kill 1 million people. It is a bacteria called Clostridium botulinum. It grows in airless places. It loves cans of food that haven't been sealed properly. It loves sausages that have been cured badly. In the 1800s, it was known as sausage poisoning. The Latin word for sausage is botulus, hence botulism. If you eat a sausage tainted with this bacteria, the toxin attacks your nerves. It blocks the signal from the brain to the muscle. You want to move your arm, but the muscle never gets the memo. You become paralyzed. Your eyelids droop. Your breathing stops. You go limp. It is a terrifying way to die. A total shutdown of the body's electrical grid. So, naturally, we decided to inject it into our faces. In the 1980s, an ophthalmologist was treating patients with uncontrollable eye spasms. Their eyelids would twitch and shut tight. It was blinding them. The doctor had an idea. If the sausage poison causes paralysis, maybe a tiny, microscopic dose could paralyze just the twitching muscle? He injected the toxin. It worked. The spasm stopped. The eye opened. But the patients noticed something else. "Doctor," they said, "the wrinkles around my eyes are gone." The paralysis had relaxed the skin. It had smoothed out the crow's feet. The deadly sausage poison became Botox. People pay hundreds of dollars to have the most toxic substance on earth injected into their foreheads just to look a little bit younger, to look a little bit more rested. It works by freezing the muscles. It forces them to relax. It is a chemical-enforced nap for your face. It is the ultimate irony of medicine. We take the things that kill us and we dilute them until they serve us. We turn monsters into pets. The blanket is still there. The room is still quiet. You have traveled from the dusty lab of Fleming to the muddy riverbank of the Willow, to the cowsheds, to the desert, and to the clinic. You have seen that the history of medicine is not a straight line of brilliance. It is a winding path of accidents, desperation, and bravery. We are not separate from the world. We are made of the same stuff, the same atoms. The same carbon. The war inside your body continues. The white blood cells are still patrolling. But now you know you have backup. You have the mold, the bark, the lizard, the flower. You are not fighting alone. We have one last stop on this journey. It is not a place on a map. It is a place in the mind. We have talked about chemical cures, drugs, molecules. But there is a cure that is purely psychological. A cure that proves that the brain is the most powerful pharmacy of all. We are in World War II. The beaches of Anzio in Italy. The fighting is fierce. The shelling is constant. An American anesthesiologist named Henry Beecher is treating wounded soldiers. The injuries are horrific, but he is running out of morphine. The soldiers are screaming. They are in shock. Beecher is desperate. He tells a nurse to fill a syringe with salt water. Just saline, nothing else. He walks up to a wounded soldier. He looks him in the eye. He says, "I am going to give you a potent painkiller. You will feel better in a moment." He injects the salt water. He watches. The soldier's breathing slows down. His face relaxes. The grimace of agony fades. He whispers, "Thank you, Doc." The soldier goes into shock, but not from pain. He relaxes. His blood pressure stabilizes. The salt water did nothing chemically, but the belief did everything. This is the placebo effect, the sugar pill paradox. Your brain expects relief, so it produces its own relief. It releases endorphins, the body's natural morphine. It turns down the volume on the pain signals. It is the strangest realization of all. Your body has the ability to heal itself, to soothe itself, but sometimes it waits for permission. It waits for a man in a white coat or a pill or a ritual to tell it that it is okay to stop hurting. Tonight, you do not need a pill. You do not need salt water. You have the permission. The day is done. The wars are being fought by the silent machines within you. The history of the world has led to this moment where you can lie in a soft bed, in a temperature-controlled room, safe from the wolves, safe from the cold, safe from the smallpox. You are the result of 4 billion years of survival. You are the descendant of the ones who chewed the bark, who survived the plague, who noticed the mold. You have earned this rest. The darkness of the room is not empty. It is a blanket of its own. Your breathing is slow. In, out. The rhythm of the biology. The hum of the vessel. Everything is working as it should. Nature is chaotic, yes, but it is also resilient, and so are you. The universe will keep spinning while you sleep. The mold will grow. The flowers will bloom. The lizards will sleep in the desert. You can let go now. The science is done. The experiment is a success. But science, true science, is never really finished. It is a book that writes itself endlessly. And while the pill bottle on your nightstand is closed, the history behind it is vast. We have spoken of mold and flowers, but we have not yet spoken of the jungle, or the trenches, or the strange glowing lights that people once thought were magic. So, Do not drift away just yet. Let us open the cabinet again. Let us reach toward the back where the dusty bottles are kept, the ones with the faded labels, the ones that tell stories of fever and war and the beautiful, deadly mistakes we made along the way. Let us transport ourselves from the safety of your bedroom to a place where safety does not exist. Imagine a tropical jungle in the 17th century. The air is heavy. It sits on your skin like a wet blanket. It smells of rotting vegetation, sweet orchids, and stagnant water. You are sweating, but you are freezing. You are shivering so violently that your teeth chatter. This is the ague, the shaking fever, the malaria. For centuries, malaria was the dragon that guarded the tropics. It killed explorers. It killed soldiers. It killed popes in Rome. It was an invisible predator that lived in the bad air. Or so we thought. The word itself, malaria, means bad air in Italian. We thought it came from the smell of the swamps. We did not know it came from the mosquito. But deep in the forests of Peru, the indigenous people knew a secret. They knew of a tree, the cinchona tree. It was a tall tree with pink flowers, and like the willow, it had a bitter bark. Legend tells of a Spanish countess, the Countess of Chinchon. She was dying of the fever in Peru. Her doctors were helpless, but a local healer offered her the bark. She drank the bitter tea. She survived. She brought the bark back to Europe, and for the first time, the Western world had a weapon against the fever. We called it quinine. It was a white, crystalline powder extracted from the bark, and it was miraculously effective. It killed the malaria parasite in the blood, but it had a flaw. It was bitter, unspeakably bitter. It made the willow bark taste like candy in comparison. British soldiers stationed in India had to take their quinine every day to survive, but the taste was so foul they could barely stomach it. They tried to mask it. They mixed the bitter powder with sugar. They mixed it with water. They added lime. And because they were British soldiers, they added gin. The gin and tonic was born. Think about that the next time you hear the clink of ice in a glass at a bar. That is not just a cocktail. It is a medical delivery system. It is a pharmacological solution to a logistical problem. The tonic water you buy today still contains quinine. If you hold it under a black light, it will glow a ghostly blue. That glow is the ghost of the fever tree, the legacy of a struggle against the swamp. We turned a life-saving medicine into a recreational beverage. It is a very human thing to do. We take the bitter survival mechanism of a tree and we turn it into a social ritual. But sometimes the origin of a cure is not found in a forest, but on a battlefield. And the substance is not a tree bark, but a weapon of mass destruction. Let us move the timeline forward. We are in the trenches of World War I. The year is 1917. The landscape is gray. The mud is deep. The sky is choked with smoke. There is a sound, a low hiss. A cloud of yellow gas drifts across the battlefield. It is heavier than air. It sinks into the trenches. It smells like garlic. It smells like mustard. This is mustard gas. It is a chemical weapon designed to kill. It burns the skin. It blinds the eyes. It destroys the lungs. It is one of the most horrific inventions of warfare. But doctors noticed something strange about the soldiers who were exposed to this gas. When they examined the survivors, they found that their white blood cell counts were incredibly low. The gas had destroyed their bone marrow. It had stopped their body from making new cells. At the time, this was just another tragedy, another horror of war. But fast forward to the 1940s. Scientists were looking for a way to fight cancer, specifically lymphoma. Lymphoma is a cancer of the white blood cells. It is a disease where the cells multiply uncontrollably. They divide and divide until they choke the body. The doctors remembered the mustard gas. They remembered that it stopped cells from dividing. They thought, what if we could use the weapon against the cancer? They took a derivative of the gas, a slightly modified version called nitrogen mustard, and they injected it into a patient with advanced lymphoma. It worked. The tumors shrank. The cancer cells, which divide faster than normal cells, absorbed the poison and died. The patient went into remission. This was the birth of chemotherapy, the treatment that has saved millions of lives, the treatment that we use to fight the emperor of all maladies. Is a direct descendant of the yellow gas that drifted across the trenches of Flanders. We took a sword designed to kill soldiers, and we beat it into a scalpel to kill tumors. It is a brutal form of medicine. Chemotherapy is poison. That is the truth of it. We are poisoning the patient just enough to kill the cancer, but hoping not to kill the patient. It is a race. A game of chicken played on a cellular level, and just like the willow bark and the foxglove and the mold, it reminds us that the line between a weapon and a cure is purely a matter of intent. The universe does not care if a molecule is good or bad. It only cares what it interacts with. Speaking of interactions, and the strange things we put in our bodies, we must talk about the glow. Close your eyes and picture the 1920s. The jazz age, the flappers, the music, and the radium. Marie Curie had discovered radium a few years earlier. It was a new element. It was magical. It produced energy out of nowhere. It glowed in the dark with a soft, pale green light. People were mesmerized. They didn't understand radiation. They didn't know about DNA damage. They just saw energy. And they thought, if it has energy, it must be good for us. So, we put radium in everything. There was radium chocolate, radium toothpaste to make your teeth shine, radium cosmetics to give your face a healthy glow. People bought jars of water lined with radium, called Radithor, and drank it every morning to cure arthritis, impotence, and fatigue. Imagine waking up in 1925. You brush your teeth with radioactive paste. You drink a glass of radioactive water. You feel energized. You feel modern. You are slowly dismantling your own bones from the inside out, but you do not know it yet. The most tragic story of this era belongs to the Radium Girls. These were young women, some as young as 14, who worked in factories, painting watch dials. They used a paint made of glue, water, and powdered radium. It made the numbers on the watches glow in the dark so soldiers could see the time at night. To get the numbers precise, the girls were taught a technique: lip, dip, paint. They would put the paintbrush in their mouth to sharpen the tip. They would dip it in the radium. They would paint a number, and they would do it again. Lip, dip, paint. Hundreds of times a day. They were swallowing the glow. At first, it seemed fun. The girls would paint their fingernails with the leftovers. They would paint their teeth so they would smile in the dark at parties. They were called the Ghost Girls because they shimmered. But then, the pain started. Their teeth began to fall out. Their jaws began to crumble. The radium, which looks chemically similar to calcium, was being absorbed by their bodies and built directly into their skeletons. They were becoming radioactive structures. They developed massive tumors. Their bones snapped under their own weight. It took years for the world to admit that the magic element was a killer. The Radium Girls fought for justice from their deathbeds. Their sacrifice is the reason we have workplace safety laws today. If you go to their graves and hold a Geiger counter over the dirt, it will still click. They are still glowing 100 years later. It is a somber thought for a bedtime story, isn't it? But it serves a purpose. It reminds us that what we consider healthy today might be viewed with horror tomorrow. It teaches us humility. We are stumbling in the dark, feeling for the light switch. Sometimes we find the light. Sometimes we touch a live wire. But you, lying there in the dark, you're safe from the radium. We learned. We stopped. The watch on your wrist glows with safe, non-radioactive phosphorescence. The water on your nightstand is just water. The toothpaste is just toothpaste. We learn by making mistakes. Terrible, painful mistakes. And sometimes, the mistake is not what we use, but what we fail to believe. Let us travel back to Vienna in the 1840s. We are entering a hospital, a large, echoing building of stone. This is the Vienna General Hospital, and it has 2 maternity clinics, Clinic 1 and Clinic 2. In Clinic 2, the babies are delivered by midwives. It is a calm place. The mothers usually survive. In Clinic 1, the babies are delivered by doctors and medical students. It is a place of death. Women begged not to be taken to Clinic 1. They would give birth in the street rather than go there. Because in Clinic 1, a mysterious illness called childbed fever stalked the wards. Women would give birth, and days later, they would spike a fever, scream in agony, and die. The doctors blamed everything. They blamed the ventilation. They blamed the magnetic fields. They blamed the diet. They blamed the constipation of the womb. Enter Ignaz Semmelweis, a young, intense Hungarian doctor. He was obsessed with the numbers. Why did Clinic 1 have a mortality rate 3 times higher than Clinic 2? He looked at the differences. The midwives in Clinic 2 stayed in the ward. They knit. They cleaned. But the doctors in Clinic 1, they were men of science. They started their day in the morgue. They performed autopsies on the women who had died the day before. They wanted to learn. They cut open the bodies to study the anatomy. Then, with their hands still smelling of the morgue, they would walk upstairs to the maternity ward and deliver a baby. They didn't wash their hands. Why would they? They were gentlemen, and gentlemen are clean by definition. Semmelweis had a horrifying realization. The doctors were carrying cadaverous particles, death particles, from the morgue to the mothers. They were the delivery system of the disease. He ordered the doctors to wash their hands in a solution of chlorinated lime, bleach. The doctors were furious. They were insulted. You are telling us we are dirty? We are doctors. But Semmelweis insisted, and the results were instant. The death rate dropped from 18% to 1%. The fever vanished. He had saved thousands of lives. He had found the answer. So, naturally, the medical community celebrated him? No, they destroyed him. They mocked him. They fired him. They refused to believe that invisible particles on their hands could cause death. It went against everything they knew. They ostracized him so severely that he had a mental breakdown. He was lured into an asylum, beaten by the guards, and died of an infected wound. A wound caused by the very bacteria he had spent his life warning people about. It took another 20 years for Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister to prove the germ theory of disease. Semmelweis was right, but he was right too early. It is a chilling reminder that science is not just data, it is people. And people are stubborn. People are proud. Even the smartest people in the room can be blinded by their own ego. But tonight, we wash our hands. We use sanitizer. We understand the invisible world. Semmelweis's tragedy is our safety. The hospital room is sterile because he was willing to be the villain. The history of medicine is a graveyard of egos. But let us move away from the doctors and look at the patients again. Or rather, let us look at the tools we use to diagnose them. We have talked about plants. We have talked about mold. Now, we must talk about a creature that is older than the dinosaurs. Travel with me to the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. It is a moonlit night in May. The tide is high. Crawling out of the dark water are hundreds of strange, armored creatures. They look like helmets with tails. They are horseshoe crabs. They are not really crabs. They are more closely related to spiders. They are living fossils. They have been patrolling the ocean floor for 450 million years. They watched the dinosaurs rise. They watched the meteor fall. They watched the mammals take over. And they kept crawling. But they have a secret. Their blood. If you were to crack open a horseshoe crab, you would see that its blood is not red. It is blue. Baby blue. It is copper-based, not iron-based like ours. But the color is not the important part. The important part is what the blood does. The horseshoe crab lives in the ocean, a place teeming with bacteria. If its shell gets cracked, bacteria rush in. The crab does not have an immune system like ours. It does not have white blood cells that hunt down invaders. Instead, its blood contains a special cell called an amebocyte. When these cells detect even a single microscopic trace of bacterial toxin, they instantly explode. They release a gel that clots the blood immediately. They seal off the wound in seconds. It is a biological containment system. In the 1950s, scientists realized how sensitive this was. They harvested the blue blood. They created a substance called LALL, Limulus amebocyte lysate. It is the most sensitive detector of bacteria on Earth. Every time you get an injection, every time a surgeon puts an implant in a body, every time a pacemaker is installed, that object has been tested with the blood of a horseshoe crab. If you put a drop of the crab blood on a surgical tool and it turns into a gel, you know it is contaminated. If it stays liquid, you know it is safe. We literally owe our sterile medical world to the blood of an ancient sea monster. We harvest them by the thousands. Drain a cup of their blue blood and release them back into the ocean. It is a strange vampirism. We drain the ancient ones to protect the modern ones. Imagine the crab drifting in the cold dark of the ocean, 400 million years of survival encoded in its blue veins. And now, a part of that survival is protecting the needle that delivers your flu shot. We are all connected. The crab, the mold, the tree, the human. It is a single, vast web of biology. We are borrowing survival strategies from everything around us. And speaking of borrowing and immortality, there is one human who achieved it, but she did not ask for it. Her name was Henrietta Lacks. The year was 1951. Henrietta was a young mother in Baltimore. She went to the hospital complaining of a knot inside her. It was cervical cancer, a tumor. Her doctor took a sample of the tumor cells without telling her. This was standard practice at the time. He put the cells in a Petri dish. Normally, human cells outside the body die in a few days. They are fragile. They need the warmth of the host. Scientists had been trying for decades to keep human cells alive in the lab, but they always failed. But Henrietta's cells were different. They didn't die. They grew. They doubled every 24 hours. They were aggressive. They were unstoppable. Henrietta passed away in October of that year. The cancer took her. She left behind 5 children and a husband who missed her. But in the lab, Henrietta was still alive. Her cells, nicknamed HeLa cells, kept growing. Scientists realized they had found the Holy Grail, an immortal human cell line. They began to ship vials of HeLa cells all over the world. To Russia, to Japan, to space. HeLa cells were used to test the polio vaccine. They were used to study the effects of the atomic bomb. They were used to create chemotherapy drugs. They were used to map the human genome. If you could weigh all the HeLa cells that have been grown since 1951, they would weigh more than 50 million metric tons. They would weigh as much as 100 Empire State Buildings. Henrietta Lacks is everywhere. There are parts of her living in frozen freezers in every major city on Earth. She has traveled further than any human being in history, but for decades, her family didn't know. They were living in poverty, unable to afford health insurance, while their mother's cells were generating billions of dollars for the pharmaceutical industry. It is a ghost story, a story of a woman who achieved immortality without her consent, a woman whose tragedy became the foundation of modern biology. Every time a scientist looks through a microscope at a human cell, there is a good chance they are looking at Henrietta. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. but also on the shoulders of mothers and crabs and milkmaids. The structure of our safety is built from their stories. It is heavy, isn't it? The weight of all this history. But it is also comforting. It means you are not alone in the dark. You are surrounded by the legacy of survival. The bed you lie in is a raft floating on an ocean of discovery. The current is slow now. The water is calm. Let us look at one last curiosity before we fully surrender to the drift. Let us look at something cold. Sleep is often compared to winter, a time of hibernation, a time of slowing down. In the forests of North America, there is a tiny frog, the wood frog. It is small, brown, unassuming. It looks like a dead leaf. When winter comes, the temperature drops below freezing. The ground becomes hard as iron. The water turns to ice. Most animals hide. They burrow deep underground. They find a cave. They keep their internal fire burning. The wood frog does not hide. It crawls under a pile of leaves. It curls up, and it does something impossible. It lets itself freeze solid. The water in its blood turns to ice. Its heart stops beating. Its brain stops thinking. Its lungs stop breathing. If you picked it up, it would be a hard, frozen pebble. You could skip it across a pond. Clinically, it is dead. But it is not dead. It is waiting. Before it freezes, the frog's liver pumps a massive amount of glucose, sugar, into its cells. This sugar acts as a natural antifreeze. It stops the sharp ice crystals from puncturing the cell walls. It turns the inside of the cell into a thick, sugary syrup that does not freeze. So, the frog becomes a biological popsicle. It spends the entire winter in suspended animation, a state of halted time. And then, when the spring sun warms the ground, the magic happens. The ice melts. The heart gives a twitch, then another. The blood begins to flow. The brain reboots. Within an hour, the frog hops away, looking for a mate. It has returned from the dead. We humans have been obsessed with this idea. Cryogenics, freezing ourselves to wake up in the future. We want to be the wood frog. We have built metal tanks filled with liquid nitrogen. We have frozen heads and bodies, hoping that one day science will figure out how to thaw us without killing us. We are waiting for the spring that may never come. But you do not need liquid nitrogen. You have a simpler technology. You have sleep. Sleep is our mini hibernation. It is our nightly rehearsal for the void. We slow down the machine. We turn off the consciousness. We drift into the gray space where time does not exist. And just like the frog, we trust that the sun will rise. We trust that the heart will keep beating. We trust that the brain will reboot in the morning. It is a leap of faith we take every single night. And every single morning, we stick the landing. The universe is full of these cycles. The frog freezes and thaws. The tide comes in and out. The heart contracts and expands. You wake and you sleep. It is a rhythm, a pulse. You are part of that pulse. You cannot escape it, and you do not need to. Feel the rhythm of your own breathing now. It is the same rhythm as the tide. It is the same rhythm as the seasons. In and out. Expansion and contraction. The science is fascinating, but the biology is simple. You are a machine designed to rest. Let us drift a little deeper now. Let us zoom in one last time. Past the organs, past the cells, past the molecules. Let us look at the engine that powers you. Inside almost every cell in your body, there are tiny, bean-shaped structures called mitochondria. You might remember them from high school biology, the powerhouse of the cell. But they are stranger than that. Billions of years ago, the Earth was a hostile ocean. Single-celled organisms floated in the soup. One day, a large cell swallowed a smaller bacteria. Normally, the large cell would digest the small one. It would eat it. But this time, something different happened. The small bacteria didn't die. It made a deal. It said, if you let me live, I will generate energy for you. I will pay rent. The large cell agreed. They became partners. They merged. That ancient bacteria became the mitochondria. It has its own DNA. It is separate from you, but it is part of you. It is an alien living inside your cells, generating the electricity that allows you to think, to move, to dream. You are not just one person. You are a colony. You are a symbiotic relationship between a host and a billion ancient bacteria. Even now, as you lie still, they are working. They are burning oxygen. They are creating ATP, the fuel of life. They are keeping the pilot light on while the furnace is turned down. You don't have to tell them what to do. They know. They have known for 2 billion years. So you can resign your position as the CEO of your body for the night. The night shift has arrived. The ancient bacteria are manning the controls. The immune system is walking the perimeter. The brain is starting its filing process. You are free to leave the office. The heavy blanket is not just a piece of fabric. It is a cocoon. Think of all the things we have seen tonight. The mold in the window, the bark on the tree, the clover in the field, the gas in the trench, the glow in the watch, the crab in the sea, the frog in the ice. They are all part of the story that ends with you lying here, safe, warm, and alive. The history of medicine is a history of fear, yes, but it is also a history of comfort. We fought the darkness so we could have this moment of light. We fought the pain so we could have this moment of peace. The struggle is for the daytime. The night is for the result. And the result is this. You are here. You are intact. The world outside is vast and chaotic. The wind is blowing. The stars are burning. The galaxies are colliding in the silence of space. But in this room, in this bed, there is only the slow, steady rhythm of your own existence. The sleepless scientist has shown you the monsters under the bed and shown you that we have tamed them. We have put them in pill bottles. We have turned them into vaccines. We have made them work for us. The monsters are on the payroll now, so there is nothing left to fear. The dialogue is over. The lecture hall is empty. The lights are dimming in the library. You can hear the silence now. It is a heavy, soft silence, like velvet. Let it wrap around you. Your eyelids are heavy. Gravity is pulling you down, gently anchoring you to the earth. The wood frog waits for spring. The crab waits for the tide. You wait for the morning. But for now, the waiting is over. The doing is over. There is only the being. Drift on the current. The science is done. The history is written. The body is ready. Sleep. But while the conscious mind seeks the void, the machinery must not stop. The lungs must heave. The blood must flow. And sometimes the machinery breaks when the body forgets how to breathe or how to process the fuel you feed it. We have to build external machines to do the work for us. We have to build iron lungs and artificial hearts and chemical regulators. We have to turn the human body into a cyborg just to survive the night. So, let us pull back the covers one more time. We are not done with the hospital. We have to visit the ward where the silence was once the most terrifying sound in the world. Imagine a room filled with metal cylinders, large yellow or gray tubes looking like submarines or perhaps boilers, rows and rows of them. Inside each cylinder is a child. Only their head is visible, resting on a small pillow outside the machine. A mirror is suspended above their face so they can see the room, or read a book, or see their parents. This is the polio ward in the 1950s. Polio was a virus that targeted the nerves, specifically the nerves that told the diaphragm to move. Breathing feels automatic to you right now. You do not think about it. But breathing is a mechanical act of violence against the atmosphere. Your diaphragm muscle pulls down, creating a vacuum in your chest. The air outside, which is under higher pressure, rushes in to fill the void. It is a bellows, but when the virus severed the connection, the bellows stopped. The child would try to breathe, but the air would not move. They would suffocate while fully conscious. So engineers built the iron lung. It was a negative pressure ventilator. It worked by changing the pressure of the entire room, or rather, the tiny room inside the cylinder. The machine would pump air out of the tank, creating a vacuum around the child's body. This vacuum would pull the chest wall out, forcing the lungs to expand. Then, the machine would pump air back in, pushing the chest down and forcing the air out of the lungs. Whoosh, click, whoosh, click. The sound of the bellows was the heartbeat of the ward. If the power went out, the nurses would have to pump the machines by hand. If they stopped, the children stopped. It is a terrifying thought, to be encased in steel, to have your breath, the most fundamental act of life, outsourced to an electric motor and a rubber seal. But for the people in those tanks, the machine was not a prison. It was a lifeline. It was the only thing standing between them and the dark. Some people lived in these tanks for weeks. Some lived in them for years. One man Paul Alexander lived in an iron lung for over 70 years. He went to law school. He wrote a book. He lived a full life, all while his body was encased in a metal tube that breathed for him. It reminds us that the human spirit is stubborn. It will find a way to exist even when the biology has failed. It will use a machine as a lung if it has to. And speaking of failures of the body and the need for external help, let us talk about hunger. Not the hunger of the stomach, but the hunger of the blood. Diabetes. For most of human history, a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes was a death sentence. It was a slow, wasting death. The body would lose the ability to unlock the doors of its cells. The blood would be full of sugar, glucose, the fuel of life. But the cells could not access it. They were starving in the middle of a feast. The sugar would build up in the blood, turning it into a thick syrup. The kidneys would try to flush it out. The patient would be constantly thirsty, constantly urinating. They would eat and eat, but they would waste away. The body, desperate for fuel, would start to consume itself. It would burn its own fat and muscle. The only treatment before 1921 was the starvation diet. Doctors would put patients on a diet of as little as 400 calories a day. It was barely enough to stay alive. It simply slowed the dying process. Enter Frederick Banting, a Canadian surgeon. He wasn't a researcher. He was a struggling doctor who couldn't pay his bills. He had an idea. He thought the pancreas held the key. He managed to get a small lab at the University of Toronto. He was given 10 dogs and a medical student named Charles Best. The summer of 1921 was hot. The lab was stifling. It smelled of dog and chemicals. Banting and Best worked tirelessly. They removed the pancreas from a dog, making it diabetic. Then they took another pancreas, mashed it up, filtered it, and injected the extract into the dying dog. The dog woke up. It walked. Its blood sugar dropped. They had found the key. They called it iletin. We know it as insulin. But here is the grim reality of mass production. To save the millions of humans dying of diabetes, they needed millions of pancreases. They went to the slaughterhouses. Imagine the stockyards of Chicago or Toronto in the 1920s. The noise, the smell of blood and offal. Scientists and factory workers would collect the frozen pancreases of cows and pigs by the ton. They would grind them up in massive meat grinders. They would treat the organ mash with acid and alcohol to extract the precious hormone. For 60 years, if you were a diabetic, you were injecting the ground-up essence of a pig or a cow into your veins every single day. You were borrowing the keys to the cell from a barnyard animal. It wasn't until the 1980s that we figured out how to use genetic engineering to make bacteria produce human insulin. But for a lifetime, humanity survived on the spare parts of the slaughterhouse. It is a visceral image, but it is also beautiful in its efficiency. We are not so different from the pig. Our locks are the same. Their keys fit our doors. The universe is a salvage yard. Nothing is wasted if you know how to use it. And sometimes the most important discoveries are made not by finding something new, but by looking at something old in a new way, or by simply making a mistake. Let us talk about the rhythm of the heart. Your heart is an electrical pump. It runs on a specific voltage, a specific timing. Lube-dub, lube-dub. But sometimes the wiring gets frayed. The signal gets blocked. The heart slows down. It stops. In the 1950s, a man named Wilson Greatpatch was building a device to record the sound of the heart. He was an electrical engineer. He was soldering a circuit board. He reached into his box of parts to grab a resistor. He grabbed the wrong one. He installed a resistor with a wrong resistance. When he turned the machine on, it didn't record sound. It pulsed. Click, click, click. It produced a steady, rhythmic electrical pulse. Greatpatch stared at it. He realized he wasn't looking at a recorder. He was looking at a driver. He realized that if he made this small enough and put it inside a chest, it could tell a broken heart when to beat. He had invented the pacemaker. The first ones were external. They were plugged into the wall. Patients had to push a cart around with their life support system. If there was a blackout, they were in trouble. But soon, they became battery-powered. They were encased in plastic and titanium. Today, millions of people have a small, silver computer implanted in their chest. It sits under the skin, quiet, waiting. If the heart misses a beat, the machine senses it. It sends a small jolt of electricity. Beat. It is a guardian angel made of lithium and wire. And it happened because a man grabbed the wrong resistor from a cardboard box. This is the chaotic nature of progress. We stumble in the dark. We trip over the answer. We have talked about electricity. We have talked about chemistry, but we have not talked about the light that sees through the skin. The year is 1895. We are in the laboratory of Wilhelm Röntgen in Germany. It is dark. He is playing with a cathode ray tube, a glass bulb that shoots electrons. He covers the tube with black cardboard. No light should escape. But across the room, on a bench, a piece of paper painted with chemicals begins to glow. It is a faint green fluorescence. Röntgen is confused. The tube is covered. Light cannot get out. He puts his hand between the tube and the paper, and he screams. Or perhaps he just gasps, because on the paper, he does not see the shadow of his hand. He sees the shadow of his bones. He sees the skeleton of his own living hand, stripped of the flesh, floating in the green mist. He has discovered X-rays. The X stood for unknown. He calls his wife Anna Bertha. He asks her to put her hand on a photographic plate. He turns on the tube. When he develops the plate, there it is, the bones of her fingers, the ring on her fourth finger floating around the bone. When Anna saw the picture, she did not marvel at the science. She shuddered. She said, "I have seen my death." To see the skeleton was to see the grave. It was a taboo. It was penetrating the veil of the body. But the doctors went wild for it. Suddenly, they could see the bullet inside the soldier without cutting him open. They could see the broken bone. They could see the coin the child swallowed. But they didn't know the danger. They didn't know that the invisible light was a stream of high-energy photons that could shred DNA. In the early days, doctors would calibrate their X-ray machines by taking an X-ray of their own hand every morning. Yup, I can see my bones. Machine is working. Many of those early radiologists lost their hands. They lost their fingers. They died of leukemia. They were martyrs to the invisible light. They bought your safety with their lives. Now, when you get an X-ray, the technician wears a lead apron and steps behind a wall. They know the dragon is in the room. They respect it. But the image of Anna Bertha's hand remains. The first time we looked inside ourselves without a knife. The first time we became transparent. We are fragile, yes. But we are also transparent to the right kind of eye. Let us move from the light to the water, from the invisible ray to the invisible killer in the glass. London, 1850. 4. The Victorian City. It is a city of fog and horse manure, but mostly it is a city of smell. The River Thames is an open sewer. The cesspools are overflowing, and the people are dying. Cholera is sweeping through the Soho district. It is a horrific disease. It drains the body of fluids in hours. A healthy man can wake up in the morning and be dead by sunset. His skin blue, his eyes sunken. The experts of the time said it was miasma, bad air. They said the smell of the city was killing people. They told people to close their windows, to burn tar to clean the air. But a doctor named John Snow, not the one from the fantasy books, had a different idea. He was a skeptic. He didn't believe in the bad air. He believed in the water. He took a map of Soho and he started to draw dots. Every time someone died of cholera, he put a black dot on the map at their address. He walked the streets. He talked to the grieving families. "Where did you get your water?" he asked. The dots began to cluster. They swarmed around a single point, a water pump on Broad Street. It was a popular pump. The water was cold. It tasted good. People came from blocks away to fill their buckets. Coffee shops used it. Pubs used it to mix with their spirits. Snow realized that the pump was the assassin. He went to the city officials. They didn't believe him. "The water is clear," they said. "The smell is in the air." But Snow was persistent. He convinced them to do one thing. He convinced them to remove the handle from the pump. They took the handle off. The people could not pump the water. The outbreak stopped. It turned out that a cesspool next to the pump had leaked. The bacteria from a sick baby's diaper had seeped through the bricks and into the well. The clear, cold, tasty water was teeming with death. John Snow's map was the beginning of epidemiology, the idea that we can track a disease like a criminal. We can find its hideout. Today, we have clean water coming out of a tap in the wall. We don't think about it, but that tap is guarded by the ghost of John Snow and his map of black dots. We have tamed the water. We have filtered the monsters out. But sometimes, the monsters are not in the water. They are in the stomach. For decades, doctors believed that stomach ulcers were caused by stress. They were caused by spicy food. They were caused by being a CEO with a bad temper. Take a vacation, the doctors would say. Drink some milk, calm down. But in Australia, in the 1980s, two researchers named Barry Marshall and Robin Warren found something else. They looked at the stomachs of people with ulcers, and they saw a bacteria, Helicobacter pylori, a corkscrew-shaped germ burrowing into the lining of the stomach. They told the medical community, "It's an infection." They said, "We can cure it with antibiotics." The medical community laughed. "Bacteria can't live in the stomach," they said. "The acid is too strong. It would dissolve them like a penny." Marshall and Warren were ignored. They were ridiculed. So, Barry Marshall did something that fits perfectly into the annals of the sleepless scientist. He went full mad scientist. He took a beaker. He filled it with a cloudy, foul-smelling broth teeming with the bacteria, and he drank it. He swallowed the culture. Days later, he started to vomit. His breath smelled like death. He had given himself massive gastritis. He biopsied his own stomach and proved the bacteria were there. Then he took antibiotics and cured himself. He proved his point by using his own body as the Petri dish. He won the Nobel Prize. It turns out the bacteria survives the acid by hiding in the mucus lining of the stomach and by producing a chemical that neutralizes the acid around it. It creates a little spacesuit for itself. Thanks to a man who drank a beaker of germs, we now know that ulcers can be cured with a week of pills. We don't need surgery. We don't need bland diets for life. It is a reminder that sometimes the established truth is wrong. And sometimes you have to do something incredibly stupid to prove it. The history of medicine is full of people doing stupid things, dangerous things, like the time we decided to put maggots back into wounds. We are in the trenches of World War I again. The mud is deep. The artillery is loud. Two soldiers are brought into the field hospital. Both have shattered legs. Both have been lying in no man's land for 2 days before being rescued. One soldier's wound is clean. It is packed with mud, but there are no bugs. The other soldier's wound is crawling. It is filled with maggots, thousands of writhing white larvae. The doctors recoil in horror. They rush to clean the maggots out, but when they wash the larvae away, they see something shocking. Underneath the maggots, the tissue is pink. It is healthy. There is no infection. There is no gangrene. The soldier with the clean wound, he dies of sepsis. The bacteria killed him. The soldier with the maggots, he survives. The maggots, specifically the larvae of the green bottlefly, are picky eaters. They do not have teeth. They secrete an enzyme that dissolves meat. But here is the trick. They only eat dead meat. They dissolve the necrotic, rotting tissue, and they leave the healthy, living tissue alone. They are microscopic surgeons. They clean the wound with a precision that a scalpel cannot match, and they secrete chemicals that kill bacteria, including the superbugs that resist antibiotics. For a while, maggot therapy was popular, but then penicillin came along. and we decided that pills were more civilized than bugs. But today, the bugs are back. You can get a prescription for maggots. The FDA has approved them as a medical device. They arrive in a sterile container. They are placed into a non-healing diabetic ulcer. They are the cleanup crew of last resort. It is gross, absolutely, but it is effective. It forces us to confront our own biological nature. We are meat, and sometimes the best way to save the meat is to let nature do what it does best: recycle. From the maggot, let us jump to the leech. The leech has a bad reputation. We associate it with medieval doctors bleeding people to death to balance their humors. And yes, that was bad science. But the leech is making a comeback too. In modern microsurgery, when a surgeon reattaches a severed finger or an ear, they can sew the arteries together easily. Arteries are thick. They are high pressure. The blood flows in just fine. But the veins that drain the blood out, they are thin, fragile. Often, they cannot be reconnected immediately. So the blood pumps into the reattached finger, but it has nowhere to go. The finger swells. It turns purple. It will die. Enter the leech, Hirudo medicinalis. The surgeon places a medicinal leech on the end of the finger. The leech bites. It injects a powerful anticoagulant and anesthetic. It sucks out the excess blood. It acts as a temporary vein. It keeps the blood flowing until the body can grow new veins of its own. The leech is a biological pump, a disposable medical device that has been evolved over millions of years to be the perfect vampire. So, if you ever lose a finger and wake up in the hospital to see a worm attached to your hand, do not panic. Say thank you. That worm is buying you time. Time. That is what all of this is about, buying time. Whether it is the iron lung buying time for the nerves to heal, or the leech buying time for the veins to grow, or the chemotherapy buying time against a tumor, we are always bargaining with entropy. And sometimes we try to cheat the ultimate deadline. Let us look at the frozen man, not the wood frog this time, but a human. In 1991, hikers in the Ötztal Alps on the border of Austria and Italy found a body. He was sticking out of the ice. They thought he was a lost hiker, maybe from a few years ago. But when they examined him, they realized he was wearing leather leggings. He had a copper axe. He had a quiver of arrows. This was Ötzi, the Iceman. He had been dead for 5,300 years. He was a time traveler. The ice had preserved him perfectly. We know what he ate for his last meal: ibex meat and wheat. We know he had tattoos, 61 of them, mostly lines on his joints, likely for arthritis pain. We know he had Lyme disease. We know he had parasites. He is the most studied patient in history. Ötzi teaches us that the cold is the ultimate preserver. He is the proof of concept for the wood frog theory. He didn't come back to life. Obviously, he was murdered, shot in the back with an arrow, but his body defied the rot. He reminds us that we are organic matter, and organic matter can be paused. We are obsessed with pausing. We are obsessed with stopping the clock, but the clock must tick. Let us look at the eyes, the window to the soul, or more accurately, the lens to the brain. Have you ever wondered how we figured out how to fix a cataract? A cataract is when the lens of the eye becomes cloudy. It is like looking through wax paper. Eventually, you go blind. In the ancient world, in India and Rome, they performed a procedure called couching. The surgeon would take a sharp thorn or a needle. They would poke it into the eye, and they would physically push the cloudy lens backward, knocking it out of place so it fell into the bottom of the eyeball. Imagine that. A needle in the eye, no anesthesia. The patient could see again. Sort of. Everything was blurry because they had no lens, but they could see light and motion. It was brutal, but it worked. But the modern cure for cataracts came from World War II. Sir Harold Ridley was an ophthalmologist treating pilots. These pilots flew Spitfires and Hurricanes. The canopies of these planes were made of a new material, PMMA, Perspex, plastic. When a canopy was shattered by enemy fire, shards of plastic would fly into the pilot's eyes. Ridley noticed something strange. The eyes didn't reject the plastic. The body didn't attack it. The plastic sat in the eye, inert, quiet. Glass would cause an infection. Metal would rust. But this specific plastic was biologically invisible. Ridley thought, if the eye tolerates this plastic, maybe I can make a fake lens out of it? He created the intraocular lens. Today, millions of people have cataract surgery. The doctor removes the cloudy natural lens and slides in a tiny piece of plastic. That plastic is the great-grandchild of the windshield of a World War II fighter plane. We are walking museums of warfare. The chemo from the trenches, the lens from the cockpit, the ambulance from the battlefield. Conflict breeds innovation. It is a sad truth. When we try to kill each other, we learn how to heal each other. And speaking of conflict, let us talk about the ultimate conflict, the one between you and the sun. Skin cancer, melanoma. For years, we cut it out, we burned it. But recently, we found a new way. We found a way to take the brakes off the immune system. Your immune system is a killer. We established that. It wants to kill everything that isn't you. So, your body has checkpoints, little chemical handshakes that tell the immune system, calm down, do not attack. This is a friendly cell. Cancer cells are clever. They learn the secret handshake. They show the fake ID to the immune system. They say, I am friendly. Do not eat me. And the white blood cells walk right past them. Scientists figured out how to block that handshake. They created checkpoint inhibitors. It is like taking the muzzle off a guard dog. Suddenly, the immune system sees the cancer for what it is. It wakes up. It attacks. It is not a drug that kills the cancer. It is a drug that lets you kill the cancer. It is unleashing the beast within. We are so powerful. Our bodies are so capable. We just need to know how to talk to them, how to give them permission. We are nearing the end of our rounds. The chart is almost full, but there is one more story. A story of a very small, very brave experiment. The year is 1984. A baby is born in California. She is known as Baby Faye. She is born with a fatal heart defect. Her heart is too weak to sustain her. She is dying. There are no human infant hearts available for transplant. Her surgeon, Leonard Bailey, proposes the unthinkable. He wants to transplant the heart of a baboon into the baby. A xenotransplant. The world watches. The ethics committees argue. People protest outside the hospital. "You are playing God," they shout. "You are making a monster." But the parents just want their baby to live. They do the surgery. The baboon heart beats inside the human chest. It works. For 21 days, Baby Faye lives. She is pink. She cries. She sleeps. She eventually died. Her body rejected the alien heart. The immune system was too strong. But for 21 days, the barrier between species was broken. Baby Faye taught us so much about rejection, about the immune system, about the compatibility of life. Today, we are transplanting pig hearts into humans. We are growing organs in labs. We are standing on the threshold of a world where we can swap parts like a mechanic swaps a carburetor. Baby Faye was the pioneer. She was the explorer who went first. The history of medicine is written in the lives of the brave, the volunteers, the desperate, the soldiers, the milkmaids, the babies. They are the sleeper agents of history. They laid down the path so you could walk on it. So here you are, lying in the dark. Your heart is beating thanks to the calcium and the electricity. Your lungs are breathing thanks to the pressure. Your blood is flowing thanks to the lack of clots. Your immune system is watching thanks to the memory of the cowpox. You are a symphony of survival. Every scar on your body is a memory. Every vaccine in your arm is a library. Every pill in your cabinet is a weapon. You are the most heavily defended creature in the history of the earth. You have the armor of the willow tree, the shield of the horseshoe crab, the vision of the fighter pilot, the metabolism of the Gila monster, the endurance of the wood frog. You are not just a human. You are a chimera, a collection of the best tricks nature ever invented. And right now, the trick you need is the simplest one of all, the shutdown. The brain is an energy hog. It uses 20% of your calories. It is expensive to run. It needs to defragment. It needs to wash away the toxins that build up during the day. When you sleep, your brain cells actually shrink. They get smaller. This opens up gaps between the cells, and fluid, cerebrospinal fluid, rushes through the gaps. It washes the brain. It is a dishwasher cycle for your mind. If you do not sleep, the trash builds up. The thoughts get cobwebs. So, let the cycle begin. Imagine the fluid washing over the cortex, cleaning out the worries, cleaning out the noise, cleaning out the fear. The science is done. The data is collected. You do not need to understand the mechanism to enjoy the result. You do not need to know how the engine works to ride in the car. You are the passenger tonight. The sleepless scientist is driving. The universe is the road, and the destination is the void. The soft, warm, safe void. Let gravity win. Let the muscles go slack. Let the jaw unhinge. Let the shoulders drop. You are heavy. You are sinking into the mattress. The atoms in your body are vibrating a little slower. The temperature is dropping a fraction of a degree. You are entering the wood frog state, the hibernation. It is safe here. The bacteria are friendly. The viruses are locked out. The monsters are in the zoo. There is nothing left to solve. Just the rhythm. In, out, lub, dub. The oldest music in the world. Listen to it. Trust it. The vessel is sound.